Welcome to the first episode of Can I Get Next, a podcast highlighting the different local scenes across the country within the fighting game community. Today's challenger is originally from Seattle, but now in North California. Not only a father, Jojo lover, and writer, but has worked on the Capcom Pro Tour for 2.5 years, managing partnerships for the Capcom Pro Tour, highlighting key stories in the FGC such as Ricky Ortiz, and helping build up the community as a whole through hard work and care. Is there anything you'd like to add?
I think the most important part there was the JoJo's fan.
Not the kid. Not that you're a father,
Yeah,
but the fact that you're a JoJo fan.
forget everything else. You know what? We could just make this a JoJo's podcast if we really want to.
Oh no, that might have to be a whole separate
Yeah,
topic. I could talk way too much about JoJo, but
yeah. That's a
since we have it pulled up, who's your favorite Jo star?
So people always ask me like who my favorite character is in JoJo's, and I always have to like qualify the answer. So my favorite Jo star is young Jonathan.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a really good
My
one. Like
f-
part
but
two.
yeah. But my favorite JoJo's character is Polnareff.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah.
So why Polnareff? Because I feel like he's kind of an uncommon favorite.
So I like a lot of I guess what would you call them, like sort of like the sidekick or side characters in JoJo's.
Yeah, yeah.
Okuyasu's like my favorite character in Diamond is Unbreakable.
Mhm.
Um, and but specifically, I think with Polnareff, like he's if you think about Stardust Crusaders as a whole,
Mhm.
um, going through there's kind of like I guess more or less two or three beats to that story, but at some point he kind of becomes almost the main character.
Oh yeah.
And I just find, like I just think he's just a fascinating character, and I love Silver Chariot, so
Oh
yeah.
yeah. He kind of
Yeah.
when you bring that up, that reminds me of Bruno from part 5
Mm-hmm.
because, Giorno's kind of becomes a side character and it's very heavily
Yes.
based around Bruno and he's actually one of my favorites.
Bruno is absolutely the main character of part five.
Oh yeah.
Like like he's the main character.
Yeah. He's
Giorno just happens to be there, right?
exactly.
He just happens to be the JoJo, but Bruno is definitely like the main character. And my favorite character from that series
Oh
is
yeah, mine too.
Guido, actually.
Oh, really interesting.
Yeah. I don't know if you've seen it. I posted pictures of it, but I have a backpack from Japan.
Mhm.
The company Outdoor did like a JoJo's collaboration like a long time ago. And I found a backpack that has all of the bullets, Guido's bullets on it.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
That is so
So it's
cool.
like my
Yeah. I
treasured thing.
I fell in love when I watched part 5. I instantly knew I was gonna like Bruno the moment like he came on screen because a like
Hmm.
his stand is so cool, but
Yeah.
like I liked his style. I thought he was
Yeah.
so stylish, and I was like, that's a well dressed man. I can
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah. His stand's amazing. I love it.
Yeah, and I think honestly, part 5 has some of my favorite stands just through creativity. And it
Hmm.
was funny, I was watching it with one of my friends, and I pointed out that all the villain characters are like named after food.
Yeah, it's weird because like in all of the other series, the villains are named after bands or singers.
Yeah,
Um, so I'm assuming that I always forget his name, but the creator
yeah.
must really love like music or something,
Right,
because like
right, right,
everyone's
right.
named after a band or a singer.
Yeah. Now, I think one of my other favorite stands in part 5 was heavy metal. Or what was it? Metallica. That's what it was.
Yeah, yeah, uh, yeah. I mean, like I love Guido, and like actually, it's kind of funny seeing what they did to Polnareff in part five. I'm just like, wow, really? I don't know if we want to spoil that. Never seen it, but like he comes back, he's back,
Yes,
and it's like,
yes.
wait, but the way they did him, I'm just like, damn, that's kind of messed up.
Yeah, they did him dirty.
But his I love like how Silver Chariot, I don't know, transformed or whatever, and became like just like this super powered, you know badass version. Well, not necessarily evil, but yeah, like I don't know, I just love Polnareff, and it sucks that like Polnareff toys are really hard to find,
Yeah.
because he is an older character, uh and so like I don't think I saw one Polnareff figure while I was in Japan. last time.
Really?
Yeah.
So, funny thing, when I was going through and watching part five, I was at the just about the beginning of it, and I was Googling like Bruno figures,
Hmm.
and the figure Polnareff came up of him, in the wheelchair,
Yeah.
and I hadn't
That's a
gotten that
fairly common one right now.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but I hadn't gotten that far yet into part five. And
Oh,
so it
okay.
was a spoiler for me. I was like, "Wait,
Rip.
why is he in a wheelchair?" And so I'm like hammering on the question. I'm like trying to understand. Of course, 2 episodes later, now I get to see
Find
him.
out why.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
I think one of my all-time favorite characters, well, my favorite Joestar personally is definitely Josuke.
Hmm.
Um, which I feel like not a lot of people will pick just because, like, I don't know if maybe part four just isn't a favorite for a lot of people.
Part four is I feel like an acquired taste, but a
Yeah,
lot of people that I know that have seen all of the parts, I like part four the most.
yeah.
It's not my favorite, but it's up there. It's good. It's
Um,
great.
oh yeah. It's but I love Josuke mostly because of his stand.
Hmm.
But I also like the style of which he's like drawn because it's that like
Yeah.
80s 90s look to him that I think is so
Yeah,
cool.
you can see like I guess the progression in art style as you
Mhm.
go through each part of the series, because like I mean we're talking like 20 years worth of
Yeah.
like animation, right?
Oh, it's
But
probably
yeah,
actually closer to like what, almost 30, maybe
yeah, I don't
40?
remember when the first part aired, but you're probably right. And I mean definitely like part four has a very unique style.
Mhm.
Um, that yeah, I appreciate that a lot about it.
Yeah. And I think it definitely has some of my favorite companions like Rohan as well.
Hmm.
I loved his character design because there's a little added bits of like the pen tips for earrings and so and like
Yeah,
the buttons too even on one of his outfits is
yeah,
all like the pen tips, the quill tips or whatever. So I think
right.
that's really cool and I love the level of detail put into it. But
Yeah.
have you played the fighting game? I mean, I'm sure you have.
So when I most people should know by now, I'm unemployed. I left my position at Capcom back in December, like after Capcom cut. Uh, and but before I did that, I started streaming more. Like late last year,
Mhm.
because I felt like I wanted a creative outlet. So one of the first things I started streaming was actually after I came back from Japan. I found a copy of JoJo's on Dreamcast,
Yeah.
because it's kind of rare in the US for Dreamcast and it's really expensive. Like
Yeah.
a really nice complete version of US version is like 100 bucks, 150 bucks. In Japan it's like 30 bucks. So I actually found some adapters and hooked up the Dreamcast and I started streaming JoJo's on Dreamcast.
Mhm.
And then I switched over to Fightcade so that I could play people online. Um, so yeah, I went pretty hard on that for like a couple months. I haven't played in a while, and I probably should. Um, but I also have like the other versions for like PS3 and PS4 that I haven't gotten to yet that I'd probably like to play at some point, like on streams.
Yeah. Well, I know like I want to say I thought I heard a rumor that they're making a new one. Like I saw it
There,
on Twitter.
well, there's a so I play a lot of battle royale games too, so
Yeah.
like PUBG and stuff like that. And in the arcade right now, there is a JoJo's battle royale game.
What?
Yeah,
Okay. So you and if it's a team game, you and I will team up together, and
I'm
we'll
not sure it's a team
Oh,
game.
is it just like a proper like one
I don't
v 100?
I don't know. Well, so I don't think it's 100, but
Okay.
because I think there's smaller maps and less players, but
Mhm.
um I hadn't seen that it was a team game. All I have seen was various like character gameplay videos that the I don't even remember who the publisher is was releasing.
Mhm.
So they had like Rohan, they had of course like the various Joestar characters and like
Yeah.
Polnareff and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's really weird and honestly it looks kind of crappy, but
Oh.
like it's the two things that I like the most that you combine those things and I'm like, well, I'm in. So if it ever comes stateside, like I'm all about
Oh
it.
yeah. I mean, that sounds sick though. I'm curious how that's implemented as far as like the gameplay goes, because when you think of like, when you think of battle royale, you usually think just like Fortnite or like PUBG or
Right.
whatever.
So it's very similar. Like every character has a. It's weird because I was wondering like how are you going to do this with every character? Because in the various mangas and animes, like not every character has some sort of projectile attack, but every
Right, right.
character has a projectile. So it's as an example, Rohan throws pins
Mhm.
at people.
Oh,
Um,
that's interesting.
yeah, yeah. Uh, so I mean, it plays very much like a battle royale game that you see. Obviously, not the building that you see in Fortnite, but like it's like you're in town, like you're in Morio or something. I don't know. There
Yeah.
may be different stages, but like most of the what I've seen is like you're in town, like kind of like a Morio, and there's you can go inside buildings and jump out windows and stuff like that. Like,
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
it's
That's
it's
kind of
kind
cool,
of interesting.
actually.
Yeah, I want to
Yeah.
play it. It
Yeah, I
also
would.
has like its own controls, like customized control because it's an arcade cabinet, but
Yeah,
it
yeah.
has like these almost weird like a flight game control set. Like there's
Really?
yeah, like there's like two different I don't know controllers or sticks or whatever that you use.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I know some people played it recently when they went to obviously Japan for Evo Japan.
Yeah.
Uh, but I'm down. Like, let me get that. Put
Hell
that,
yeah.
insert that into my veins,
Right?
please.
Right?
Yeah. Hook me up. Put me in the Matrix on that one.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
So did you watch Evo Japan when it aired? I'm assuming you did.
I watched part of it. I'm too old to stay up that late.
Yeah, I understand that.
But I did catch some of it, and one thing that I appreciate about and this could be a good segue into like different locals. One
Yeah.
thing that I really appreciate about Japanese tournaments is you're gonna see a lot of players um, who aren't like household names. We know the Daigos, the Bonchons, the Magos, the Fudos, right?
Right.
But when you go to Japan, even like even seeing some players who are like OG players, like that have been playing since like Street Fighter 2 or Street Fighter 3, right? Uh, One guy, I had no idea he even played Street Fighter 5 is Crusher,
Mhm.
and I think currently he plays Birdie. But he actually played Sodom in Street Fighter Alpha 2 and 3,
Mhm.
probably Street Fighter Alpha 1 also, but uh, and like he was known for playing Sodom, but he's not a guy that travels, and Japan because of the arcade culture, five obviously it took some time for that game to come to arcades, but also there's like a younger generation of players in Japan that similar to like what we have in the West,
Yeah.
um, that have gotten into the game through those household names going around and training players. Momochi has like his own Shinobism school, right, where he trains players. Or like Bonchan goes to like universities and colleges where they hold tournaments that are literally like 21 and under, age 21 and under tournaments. Um,
Really?
yeah, and that's so that to prevent like all the old heads coming in and mopping up the new guys, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And that's cool because like you get to now you're they're training and Japan's known this, the community's known this for a while. They didn't really have a younger generation coming up after the guys like Bonchan and whatnot, right?
Yeah.
So they knew that they needed to cultivate a younger generation. So they essentially created their own locals, or they used places like the esports, various esports venues. Usually it's streams like where they come together and play in a house. Like the
Right,
the whole
right.
house mentality is still very much a thing
Oh
there,
yeah.
where everyone comes, five or six guys get together and play in a house. So yeah, they cultivated a younger generation to, and so I like seeing that at Japanese tournaments. I
Yeah.
like seeing the guys that I remember Street Fighter 4, Ultra Street Fighter 4. Uh, uh, what was his name? Dasho won TGS, Tokyo Game Show,
Mhm.
and he was a set player that no one outside of Japan heard of.
Yeah.
No one knew who he was. And he beat Bonchan in grand finals, and it was like, that was the coolest thing. So
Yeah, yeah.
I like seeing stuff like that.
Oh yeah. I mean, everybody likes to see an upset, especially from like a no-name player. Um,
Mhm.
so I
But the thing is like we don't know him, but like
oh, but he's
he's a
well known.
killer.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
he's a killer because, again, that arcade culture in Japan, right? Like, these guys can
Yeah.
play each other from anywhere, and so they're just amazing players. The last time I played, I competed at an Evo was a couple years ago,
Mhm.
and I played a guy who I had no idea who he was. I Googled it. All I could find was old Super Street Fighter 4 videos of him playing Ibuki,
Mhm.
and I was like, well, I assume he's probably gonna play Ibuki because I don't know why you wouldn't play Ibuki in Street Fighter 5. This was like season 2.
Okay,
Uh,
yeah.
I'm like, I don't know why you wouldn't play Ibuki. And
Right.
sure enough, he played Ibuki and he just destroyed me.
I mean, at least you're right on one front.
Yeah, yeah, I wasn't ready for it. I did hit it because I was playing Colleen. I did hit him with an EX low parry, and I felt good about that
Yeah.
because he was using crouching short a lot,
Yeah.
or light kick. And I remember I still lost, of course. I remember I got up though, and this dude behind me was like, "Yo, did they give Colleen like a new move or something?" I was like, "What? No, that's just her EX low parry. You almost never see it because it's super risky to do."
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah,
So,
yeah, it's
talked
funny.
about Japanese local scene, but what is
Hmm.
your local scene like? And we can touch on Seattle or we can touch on obviously North California as well.
Yeah, I'm originally from Seattle, and so I'm old. I grew up in like the arcades back in the day, and when I was like I was a freshman in high school when Street Fighter 2 first came out in arcades. I was big into Street Fighter 2 uh, and going into games like at the time Street Fighter 3. Nobody played Street Fighter 3 because it just wasn't popular.
Yeah, yeah.
Everyone it wasn't the game that everyone wanted. Third Strike didn't become even popular until well after it came out in arcades.
Yeah.
Um, but I spent a lot of time playing games like that and especially Tekken. Uh, in arcades and whatnot. And then life happened, whatever, and I kind of got away from I guess fighting game and especially competitive fighting games until like the mid you know 2010s or whatever.
Mhm.
As especially as like Street Fighter 4 was really picking up competitively. Um, and so being in Seattle, I got to see Seattle's really well known for a couple of different games. Tekken, they have a strong Tekken scene, but they actually had a really strong, Marvel scene, like Marvel versus Capcom 2 back in the day.
Yeah.
So there is sort of that Marvel legacy that's still in the Seattle area.
Okay.
And a lot of my close friends, they competed heavily, like in Marvel versus Capcom 3.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's pretty
Uh,
big here too in Arizona. Like there's still a very heavily dedicated
Oh yeah,
scene.
yeah, yeah. And it's cool to see that. Although obviously, without tournament support or whatever, and then of course Infinite came out.
Yeah.
You're you the scene it tends to fade away, right? Like a scene has its ebbs and flows as games come and go.
Right.
And I would say that Street Fighter 5 was really good for Seattle in its the first couple years. Like everyone wanted to compete. I think one of the best events in 2000 was it 17, 16 or 17 was the Red Bull Battlegrounds.
Mhm.
2016 was the Red Bull Battlegrounds because the Seattle scene was super strong, but we had all of the top North American players coming through, of course, and
Yeah.
that's when Punk like had his breakout event. Um, and so, since then, I think, like I said, we're I wouldn't say that they're not strong, but they've kind of had the they had their flow, and now they're kind of in their ebb right now.
Yeah.
And I think some people maybe lost interest or whatever. Obviously, as the seasons have changed in Street Fighter 5, in particular, people's interests come and go. I think as a whole, Champion Edition coming soon, and like the changes, for lack of a better term, because I don't think it's officially called Season 5, but in Season 5 has regenerated or renewed a lot of interest. So
Mhm.
now I'm seeing the guys in Seattle holding more uh, in-house sessions and things like that, which I
Yeah.
think is really cool. They do have a weekly in Seattle at the GameWorks, which I used to go to quite a lot. Uh, So I think they're in a situation where there's interest again, and even some older players or some players that weren't really playing five a lot, but they loved four, are playing more, and I think that's good. I think that's healthy for a scene. I think it's healthy. I think it's great when a Street Fighter scene is healthy, um, because when new games come out, other new games come out, then you do have more people around, and they get interested in those games. Obviously, everyone right now is all on the Grand Blue
Oh yeah.
versus,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Uh, and I think it's good for those games. And obviously, it's really up to the how the publishers handle maintaining the interest levels in those games,
Yeah.
right? But I definitely feel like Seattle is in a situation. One of my favorite players is, I think he just turned 18, is Chris CCH.
Mhm.
And in the last year or two, he's really gotten more well known across, maybe nationally, but internationally too,
Mhm.
because he's traveled more. When because he was underage, he traveled a lot with his parents.
Right, right.
But he's done really well at, like, major events, at national level events, not just local.
Mhm.
And it's kind of cool to see a kid like that who is playing Guile a lot. He's like 16 years old, and now he's playing like Sakura and some other characters, but he's also having, like, more success. And it's really cool to kind of see like that kind of progression from someone who's young, as they mature both as a player and a human being.
Yeah, yeah. Well, no, I think that's what's neat is like when you see because Tekken, I know they have there's that kid. He's like 13 now, I think, but he's extremely skilled.
Hmm.
I think he's from the South area. Um,
I think I know you're talking about, but even I want to say the what's his name, AK or whatever, from the Philippines, is
mhm.
also super young,
Yeah.
if I remember. And that's, to me, like, that's what's really cool about fighting games right now. We're in a great time for fighting games because we did go through like generations of fighting games where it's just like us old dudes, right?
Right, right.
And now it appeals, like, they're appealing to everyone. So it's not just kids. It's like, obviously, women.
Yeah,
I love seeing more women, like, actually competing.
absolutely.
And just seeing, I think, more people involved, because it's healthy for games, right? Like,
Oh yeah.
you want to see people playing the games. You want the games to stick around, so you want to see people playing the games. But it is actually very interesting for me to see a player, especially in my background, as first as media,
Mhm.
and then coming into working for Capcom Esports. I obviously know a lot of players. I've seen a lot of players sort of grow and mature, both as people and players. And it's really kind of satisfying. Like, Idom's probably one of the best examples. Seeing that kid win Capcom Cup, uh, I couldn't be happier for anyone, right?
Oh, absolutely. Well, and what I loved was like the post interview was him being like the guy was like, "Oh, so what are you going to do with all that money?" And he's like, "Probably buy some socks."
Yeah, yeah, and I think I heard that he actually had an offer to go to Red Bull Kumite, because Red Bull Kumite was after Capcom Cup,
Yeah.
and it was in Japan, and he turned it down because he wanted to. What I heard was he turned it down because he wanted to spend time with his family, and I'm just like, God,
Oh,
this kid is just
that's
he's
wholesome on
just a
another level.
he's just a can I curse on this? Is that okay? Like, he's such a treasure.
Oh yeah.
He's
And
such a
yeah,
treasure.
you can curse.
Such a
That's okay.
Okay, he's such a fucking treasure, and
Right?
I have to emphasize that he's such a fucking treasure. But there's a lot of guys like that, and obviously a lot of guys not that haven't had that level of success. But one of my best, you know, friends from Seattle, we spend a lot of time. Anytime we're at events, we spend a lot of time together. Kyle P. He's Marvel player at first, but got into Street Fighter Five, and now he's playing other games as well. Uh, but I mean, it's guys like him actually that help continue to, like, cultivate and, like, nurture the community in Seattle. You know, he's the type of guy, like, hey, if you want to learn to play something Capcom 3 or Street Fighter 5, like, sure, come through. He's
Yeah.
not going to take it easy on you. He's probably going to beat you like 200 times. And hopefully you'll come back. There's a lot of people that haven't. Like, they take their lumps and they're just like, yeah, fuck this, right? And they don't
Right.
come back.
Yeah.
But it's the ones that do, that, you know, those are the ones that you really want to see stick around and grow as a player, and
Yeah,
probably likely have better success as a player.
absolutely. And I
That's how I
think
learned to play Marvel versus Capcom 3. We had an old head MVC2 player who basically beat him like 200 times in a row before he ever got like one game off him.
yeah,
But
yeah.
he just kept coming back.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, like, so I'm fairly new to the fighting game community, and
Hmm.
I've been a part of it for about a year and a half now, and for me, like, that was me because I had never touched it. Like, I had dabbled in fighting games when I was younger, but
Hmm.
I hadn't properly like taken them seriously. So, kind of sitting down and getting like my ass handed to me multiple times by just about every single person in our scene, in our local
Hmm.
scene. Um, but still willing to come back when you finally get that, like, that even that first round off somebody, that's such a proud moment because it shows like that progression.
Yeah, there's something to uh seeing tangibly seeing your progression. I wouldn't say that I've ever been great at fighting games.
Mhm.
uh Street Fighter 5, I'm still like, I don't know, super gold status or whatever. I haven't played in a long time,
Yeah.
especially online, but uh it is interesting because with Street Fighter 5 and just sort of learning how to approach the game in a in a as I guess a competitor, for me, and I lost a lot to those guys too. Like, uh, you know, Kyle P, John Kim, all the guys in Seattle, like, they've taken plenty of games off me, right?
Yeah.
Although I did beat Kyle P in season one with Ryu on like in a tournament on stream, but for some reason that archive is gone.
Well, we
I
have
don't
it archived here,
I don't know what
as per
happened to
you.
it, but I'm just saying. Um, but like, yeah, seeing like that progression, there's something that feels really good about it. And it's actually kind of interesting because uh, it wasn't until I started playing Jojo's recently, because I'd never played Jojo's, the fighting game, um, before. Because I was around when it came out in arcades, but
Right, right.
nobody played it, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm actually learning that game, and I don't often play new games where I have no knowledge of it whatsoever, and I'm learning it, and I learned a lot of. I feel like I learned actually a lot about fighting games in general, just like learning how to play that game and different characters.
Yeah.
That uh, I'm kind of like, well, what if I went back to like Street Fighter 5 or Tekken 7, and how would like how can I apply what I've learned in this game to that? And it's not just like the mechanics. It's just sort of like playing as a competitor, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's important for a lot of people, but I think a lot of people don't know how to sort of accomplish that, or don't know how to learn, to play fighting games. That I think that's the biggest struggle for a lot of people.
Yeah. So I think you're talking about like Chris and everybody. And it seems like we kind of touched on what the next topic is, which is it was just things you like about your scene, because it
Hmm.
seems like obviously you like people that help build the scene up, help put forth the effort to help others grow and stuff like
Sure.
that.
So here's my thing. I come from a time where we played in arcades, and I was as big an asshole as anybody else in arcades.
Yeah.
I just wanted to beat everybody, get them off my machine. I didn't, I wasn't friendly with anyone unless they were actually like, like my close friends.
Right.
Um, and there are still communities that I guess feel like that's how they should be, and I don't agree with that whatsoever. I We are at a point now where if you want more people playing these games, sure, that doesn't mean that you can't like beat someone 200 times and hope they come back, right?
Yeah.
But I think the days of being like assholes and like like, oh, you gotta take your lumps because I took my lumps in the arcade, like I got in a fist fight one time, like that shit is stupid.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
That shit is stupid, and that's not how it should be now. The world has changed. The world has evolved. And quite frankly, with everything that's going on in the world, a lot of us just want to play some games to escape this bullshit,
Yeah.
and we don't want to like, you know, live other bullshit in our games. So I think a lot of communities have done amazing jobs at trying to, one, especially if they're in a situation where, like I said, they're kind of in a the players have gone away for whatever reason, right?
Mhm.
And they're trying to rebuild, and I think that's kind of where we are with like NorCal, especially like San Francisco Bay Area. You know, this San Francisco Bay Area was there were legitimately two, maybe well, three or four, but in reality, when we looked at like, especially during maybe the Street Fighter 4 days, uh, which I would consider like the peak, you looked at like the East Coast, like New York, essentially NLBC,
Mhm.
and uh, Wednesday night fights, SoCal, and the Bay Area, because Capcom's in the Bay Area,
Yeah.
and a lot of strong players either grew up in the Bay Area or moved out here because that's where the strongest, competition was in
Right.
going all the way back to like, the Street Fighter 2s, 3s, the Alpha series, the versus games, like the strongest competition was on the West Coast and the Bay Area and maybe SoCal, right?
Yeah.
And Texas has always been pretty strong too. Um, they have a long history of great players in a variety of different games, but specifically for NorCal, Street Fighter 4 was at its peak. Churning the Butter, man, I tuned into Churning the Butter stream every week. I think it was Wednesday or Thursday, I can't remember. Um, and you would just see all the top players show up for it, right? Like it's a
Yeah.
weekly,
Yeah.
but 50 to 60 people show up, all the top players. Street Fighter 5 comes out, and you get a new generation of players, renewed interest. But you know what? There's a lot of people that didn't like 5 from 4, so some of those players start to go away. Life happens, whatever, jobs, people grow up.
Mhm.
The game's been out for 5 years now. Like that's a lifetime for video games.
Yeah.
And so I think we've seen where in the Bay Area in particular, we did get to a point maybe around like season 2 or 3 where a lot of the players that you would normally see just aren't around anymore. Maybe they have new jobs or whatever, right?
Mhm.
And so they kind of hit this, valley. If you're talking peaks and valleys, they kind of hit this valley, and I think the community churning the butter went away. So now there wasn't even locals. I remember when I first moved here about 2.5 years ago, there was still weeklies and monthlies.
Mhm.
Shortly after I got here, almost all of that disappeared.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, like the monthly stopped, the weekly stopped. This is like whether it's attendance or just people just can't, don't have the time to do it, whatever.
Yeah.
They open up an esports arena and Wednesday night fights. They start Wednesday night fights, and that's been, I think, a huge. Uh, I think it's huge for NorCal scene because now they have, obviously a Wednesday night fight. So like you have a brand name, right?
Right,
Um,
right.
but like you have the staple fighting games, of course, the Tekkens, the Street Fighter Fives, Guilty Gear, whatever. But they do other games too, and there's a lot of people that are now sort of when the TOs left. Look, and let's be real, when we at Capcom, when I was still there, when we hired Carolyn Mama Dow,
Mhm.
I mean that was a lot of community and TO support that got lost because she was heavily involved in tournament organizing and
Yeah.
at that level, right?
Yeah.
Uh, so it did kind of strike a blow to the NorCal scene, but now you've had people, and now you have people stepping in and kind of filling that void, which is fantastic. And especially with like Wednesday night fights, those guys are doing a great job over there, and I think that they've really built that thing up. And it's competitive again. Like it's really cool to see, like the LPNs and uh, no respects. It's occasionally you'll see like the Gian brothers come out, Kelvin and well, I think Brian's still in the area, but
Mhm.
guys that haven't competed in a while too are starting to come out a little bit more. Once in a while you see those guys, and they were kind of like, not, I wouldn't say the pillars, but like they were the strong ones in this scene for a long time.
Yeah.
Uh, we don't have like the PR Balrogs and the Ricky Ortiz's coming out as much or at all. They're doing whatever they're doing, and that's fine. But now you're starting to, I think, to see even the player base kind of fill the void. And I was just talking about this with someone the other day. But what I really appreciate about maybe the last couple years is you have what I'm kind of calling the middle class players. So they're not like the top players, right?
Right.
But you kind of like have you're spotlighting middle class players more, both in like esports initiatives and these things, and they're getting better. So now you are seeing. I mean, I think again, Idom I think was a pretty good case. Like Idom's a great player, but he wasn't like a top player
Yeah, yeah.
until the last maybe 2 or 3 years even. And it's guys like that are now able to elevate their game, and it's through things like Wednesday night fights or NLBC that they're able to do that because they're going to face fierce competition every week.
Yeah, and I think this kind of emphasizes the point that like having a local scene is so important
Hmm.
because it nothing beats, and I think this is across the board, anybody can agree, nothing beats playing somebody in person.
Of
It doesn't matter
course.
how many ranked matches you do or casual matches or lobbies, nothing beats playing somebody in person because you have that direct feedback immediately, which like sure you could get from a lobby, but like
Hmm.
you don't have to deal with the lag.
Yeah, I mean,
The-
look, netcode issues aside, right? Like
yeah.
when you play someone online, it doesn't matter how you can have the best netcode. And look, when I played in Seattle, I played online a lot, Street Fighter Five, and I had pretty good connection. So it's whatever. But when you're playing people online, especially at a certain like rank, a certain level,
Mhm.
um, you're not getting like the optimal experience to grow as a player. Sure, you might learn how to deal with someone who's kind of random online, right?
Sure.
Because you're going to run into someone into a tournament, like maybe your first round in a tournament, right? They'll probably kind of play YOLO and random. I
Yeah.
mean, whatever, right? But if you want to actually improve and grow as a player, of course, you need to you can do it online, I guess. You can do lobbies, and you can work with people, but I think like you said, there's nothing uh better than sitting down next to someone, and even if you are afraid to ask, or aren't the type of person to ask like, hey, what can I do to improve, or what can I do better here, right? I'm kind of not really that person. I don't want to get mopped by someone and be like, yo, what do I need to do, right?
Yeah.
uh but I am a little I can self-reflect, and if you're the type of person that you can even just play some games and sort of like self-reflect on like, okay, like maybe I need to work on this or that, whatever. You absolutely the best the best way to improve in your game is to sit down with people, and that is why locals are important. Now, having said that, like there's always a discussion of like when you don't have a local scene and people are like, well, all it takes is two players. I mean, yes, you're right, but it's harder than that, right?
Oh,
Like
absolutely.
it's hard to get people motivated to come out, especially if they're not, you know, if they're new to fighting games or they're not used to like competing, right?
Mhm.
Losing sucks.
Oh, 100%.
Nobody likes losing.
No.
And you're going to lose in fighting games. You are going to lose more than you are going to win in fighting games. That's just a fact of life.
Mhm.
It doesn't, and you can be the toppest player or whatever, right? You can be the number one player on the Capcom Pro Tour, but you're probably going to lose more than you're going to win, because if you go to 20 tournaments, let's say, and you only win 5 of them, guess what? You lost 15, right?
Yeah.
So losing sucks. But it's the support, and it's learning, like having the locals there to help support, and even just get games. Like some people don't have the luxury of getting games.
Mhm.
uh and I think that's super important for a lot of different scenes, and I think we're seeing more growth in even what I would say is underrepresented regions, like Vancouver as an example, Canada.
Mhm.
um they're doing a lot of good stuff up there too, and the Seattle guys love going to like their events because they're really well run.
Yeah.
So it's almost like they're one kind of like scene, you know, between Seattle and Vancouver now,
Yeah, yeah.
which is pretty cool. I think that's amazing.
No, no, it really is. Especially, because it is technically international. Um,
Yeah.
So which is so cool because you're seeing like you're not just seeing like, oh, it's Canada versus the US or anything like that. You're not seeing competitive, but you're seeing like collaborative work, and I'm all
Hmm.
supportive for collaboration.
Hmm.
But yeah, no, that's the thing that's interesting about like a lot of scenes is like and again, playing in person, for me nothing beats playing in person. And not only do you strengthen your gameplay, but I feel like you build bonds and relationships, and that's where that community feel comes in, because you can have the community feel online, but for me, sitting down and being friends with people and having people in my corner at the end of the day when I go to a tournament or when I
Mhm.
compete or even when I'm just running sets, and it's like having that person, like that interpersonal interaction is so important, and it nothing beats it, really.
Yeah, I
Because
mean,
I love
if
building bonds with somebody that shares a common interest.
yeah, I mean, there's no cooler feeling, I think, than when you have a group of players from Seattle that go to Evo or,
Mhm.
Combo Breaker or whatever, right? And we're literally all just coordinating when everyone's playing so that either we can just go spectate their pools,
Mhm.
or offer that support, like if they need it. Um, uh, there is, I mean, you're right. Like, there's nothing there. Nothing feels better than just even knowing that someone's got your. I remember. I think I don't remember if it was the last year of West Coast Warzone, but it was, I think, 4 years ago now. I went to West Coast Warzone, and I was actually still with Yahoo Esports at this point, and I was
Mhm.
doing work, but I actually competed in Street Fighter. And so a couple of our Seattle guys came down, and one of them was watching me play in pools. I played a Dalsum player, I think, and he played Dalsum, so it actually helped that I had, that matchup experience. But
Right.
he was standing there watching. I think he even, like, patted me on the shoulder or whatever when I took a round or something like that. And I just remember, like, I'm thinking about it now, and I just remember feeling like, man, like, I'm glad someone was there to support me. Because
Yeah.
usually, like, I just play and it's like whatever. But it does, like, it feels good to have that support.
Oh yeah. Well,
And of
like
course, when you see on a stream someone from a region who does, wins or whatever, and you see, like, everyone just, like, go nuts in the crowd, right? Like, that's pretty cool too.
oh, absolutely, absolutely. So a couple things actually, because it's funny you mentioned, like when you see somebody on stream and everybody goes nuts in the crowd. So I just went to Frosty, and you
Mm-hmm.
you had a guy that's not from the area versus just a kid.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot who just a kid was playing at the moment. His name slipped my mind, but I know just a kid obviously is from the Chicago scene, and so you
Mm-hmm.
have the crowd just going
Mm-hmm.
absolutely
Yeah.
bonkers because it's their boy, in grand finals,
Mm-hmm.
trying to, and he made an amazing comeback. Unfortunately, he lost, but he held on so hard and so strong. Even his mom was like sitting in the front seat. So it's
I
so
think I
cool
remember
to
this.
like, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It was really cool to see like all these people just like supporting him and cheering for him and stuff like that. And even a personal story, when I competed at Evo for the first time this past Evo,
Mm-hmm.
and so let me start off by saying, I consider myself probably one of the bottom players in our scene. Just because I'm one of the a lot of newer players. A lot of the guys in our scene are old heads. They've been
Mm-hmm.
around since 4 and 3 and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
So they have heavy experience with the game, and even with Street Fighter 5, and I'm newer to it. And also being the only girl in our scene, I'm the only one that shows up to our locals.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but with that being said, I remember Evo. I'm at my first match, and everybody has the match jitters. I'm nervous, but I remember like I turn around and I see some of our local Arizona guys, and they're like, "All right, you got this, you got this," and it was like such a proud moment for me because I won my first set. And so I didn't go 0-2 at a local, so I felt so proud because it's like here I am, kind of like in a way like representing Arizona's scene, and I'm
Yeah.
not going 0-2. And so having the guys watch that too because they've seen my growth since the get-go, and so having them see like me win my first set or my first match, it was a very proud moment. It felt so good because I could show them that too, because it's not like I have to prove anything to them, but it's kind of like when you go up to your parent and you show them you got an A+ on the test or something like that.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
kinda
Right.
like that sensation.
Put that on the fridge.
Exactly, right? Flexiss didn't go 0-2 at Evo. Um, so yeah, no, it was really cool, but it was really nice to know I had people cheering for me.
Yeah.
Um, 'Cause it makes you feel good, 'cause it makes you f like, at the end of the day, they're still gonna, of course, support you, but it does, it makes you feel good, 'cause it makes you, like, it kinda pumps you up.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess on the reverse side, like, especially from a local perspective, when you have players come in from other regions who are invading, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know if this is a rumor or if it's just like just internet talk or whatever, but Punk was at the last Wednesday night fights here in NorCal, and
Mhm.
the talk is that like he now lives out here. I don't know if that's the case or not.
Mhm.
Um, but I mean, I think that's interesting. One, it's kind of surprising just because like he was just there. I saw the picture of like the three, the top three in Street Fighter. I
Yeah,
was like,
yeah, I
oh,
saw that.
like wait, what? Like, what's he doing here? Um, but yeah, like just the idea that of course, you want to protect your home turf.
Of course.
And I remember Northwest Majors in 2015. We had of course, a lot of people come up from California and from other parts of the country. But you had like at this point you had like the evil geniuses, as like the PR Balrogs, the Justin Wongs, the Ricky Ortizes, right?
Yeah.
And we had a guy, Fawaz, who I don't remember if he made top eight, but I want to say he eliminated Ricky, or somebody, right? And
Mhm.
it was just pretty hype for Seattle, because like this guy was a strong player, um, and it's just a really cool feeling to see like your local scene kind of rally behind you like that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and that's the thing too. It's like it's showing that support. So we had in Arizona, we had undefeated this past
Hmm.
year, and we
Shout out to
actually we
Armando.
yes, yes, yes. Shout outs to Armando. We're gonna be
By the
having
way,
it.
they're on the Capcom Pro Tour this year.
Yes, I'm so excited.
You're welcome.
I'm so excited. It's gonna be such a fun event, and everybody has to come to me. I don't have to
Yeah,
travel
that's the
for
best.
once.
That actually is the best.
um, I remember, so last year we had a bunch of guys from Arkansas, just out of nowhere, just a bunch of dudes from Arkansas decided to come to this tournament, a bunch of invaders. So it was a very proud moment every time we would see somebody from our scene beat them.
Mm,
And of course,
interesting.
we had them. We had Romance, who I believe
Hmm.
is in Nevada.
Yeah, Vegas.
Yeah, yeah. And then we had oh god, Diddy Mokoff there.
Yeah, he's
W-
also in Vegas.
Yeah, so it was really cool because we had these two other guys that are also invaders that are known as like top players as well.
Yeah.
So it was really cool to have them there. And I remember our grand finals was one of our local guys, um, and it was Diddy Mokoff. And it's funny because our grand finals was Dalsum versus Dalsum.
Yeah. I
So
think I
like,
remember that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So it was a really cool experience to like, and of course everybody's rooting for our local guy.
Mhm.
Um, and so like we're all sitting there, we're all cheering, we're wanting him to win so bad. Unfortunately, Diddy Mokoff did take championships, so congrats to
Yeah,
him.
he's a pretty strong player.
Oh yeah. He definitely is. He's a very strong Dhalsim. But when we talk about like defeating invaders and stuff like that, every time like an Arkansas guy came up and it was against an Arizona guy, we were all like we're
Get
all
it.
over it. In Arizona, we have some shit talkers, with any scene, of course.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so it's always fun. I think that's the fun part is when you can like have friendly banter and shit talk.
yeah.
I think that's always fun. And so like, we have a bit of the goofiness in that
Hmm.
regard. Um
Yeah, it's interesting because like obviously as you continue with this podcast and talk to different people or players from different
yeah,
scenes, they'll probably have a more s- you know I guess specific commentary related to their scenes, right?
right.
Especially if they're heavily involved. Um, I think it's interesting for me because yes, I have I have been part of local scenes. Admittedly, I'm not as in tune with the NorCal scene as I'd like to be. A lot of that was work related. Like
Oh, of course.
I'm spending a lot of hours trying to manage this pro tour and whatnot. But
Yeah.
I think though, in my experiences though, both as media and being in esports, in fighting games, my exposure to just like various local scenes, uh, or various national, like U.S. American scenes and international scenes. I really appreciate like just the exposure to those different scenes, because we only get to see kind of like especially if it's on streams, right? Like they only see a small taste of it.
Mhm.
And when you go to somewhere like Evo or whatever, it's like, man, that's a tournament with like 2,000 people, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's it the Evo is obviously a very different thing.
Oh, yeah.
But like being in, I mean, if you've never been, I tweeted this too. Like when I was in the Dominican Republic for Game Over last year, and just seeing the entire venue just going crazy over not only their players but like the players that they worship, like the Tokitos, right?
Yeah.
Or just in general, like seeing hype stuff in a fighting game, like
Mhm.
they just go bananas. And it's amazing. Like it gives you goosebumps, right? Like there is a true love, like you can tell there's a true love just for like the game and like the competitive spirit.
Mhm.
uh and you know not to it's not like I'm calling anyone out, but like you don't see that as much in various regions, and especially like in the US. I think we're just wired differently, right?
Yeah.
uh but I mean, I love the fact that I've been exposed to various international scenes, and of course, local scenes in the U.S. as well. One of my favorite things to do, and it has always been, is when I go to an event, especially at an event that I've never been to before, or a city I've never been to before. I mean, I try to make myself available to people. People want to talk to me about a lot of different things, right? Of course, they want to talk business, but in general, like I'm just happy to talk with people and learn more about not only that player, but that community, that city, whatever, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Uh, and I mean, this is like these podcasts are actually a great opportunity for you to do that.
Mhm.
Uh, but yeah, I mean, it's just really cool to and it's a luxury. Like I don't take it for granted. Like I've been to a lot of different places and I've seen a lot of cool matches. I've seen a lot of cool tournaments, a lot of champions in the last 5 years or whatever in the work that I've done. But man, sometimes just being in a city and being like watching like a community rally around like its own players at a tournament, like that's I think that's the coolest thing. And then seeing those players succeed, obviously, like in their tournaments,
Oh,
like
absolutely.
that's amazing.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree, and I think that's what makes it so special. Um, like, and that's what I'm thankful for, is being able to travel as much as I did last year. I went to completely new regions to me. I went to Chicago, I went to Atlanta and Vegas and stuff like that, and so experiencing their scenes, experiencing their locals, um, and meeting their players, and like
Hmm.
like hearing about heavy hitters that you wouldn't otherwise know if they you weren't there.
Hmm.
Um, because maybe they don't have the opportunity to travel because they have day jobs, or maybe they can't afford it, or they have families and kids and so on and so forth. Um, I think that's what makes it really special. But it's also like my big point of this podcast, what I really wanted to do was highlight a lot of scenes, but also
Hmm.
kind of bring everyone together, because at the end of the day, we're all part of one community.
Hmm.
And I think understanding different scenes and like knowing, okay, this scene is this way and this scene is this way, and kind of having like everybody, I feel like I'm hoping by the end of this, I'll have an idea of what everybody loves about their scene and what they want
Hmm.
to see improve. Um, because of course there's always room for improvement with anything,
Yeah.
and I think obviously a lot of that has to do with like collaborative efforts, because one man can't fix something, or woman I
Sure.
should say.
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
so but yeah, no, it's a special thing to like go to a local event. Like when I went to Final Round was my first CPT event. It was yeah, Final Round last year,
Hmm.
and I remember we went to like the little pre-tournament there, and that was so cool. It was such a cool experience because I had never seen anything like that, because I only knew my own scene. I
Right.
only knew what where our locals were held, and what how strong our scene was and stuff like that. So like seeing, okay, their locals are held in this like super cool looking esports place, and you know,
Right.
it
Yeah.
was a really cool experience. And it was like, oh wow, I wish my scene had this, or and stuff like that. And so you're able to kind of learn, um, and also like help your personal scene grow if you see things that are successful in another scene.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely helps. to go to different events and see how, like if you're a tournament organizer or even like something like on, on the production, because we know, most of us know that when it comes to production uh, at a local level,
Mhm.
I mean, it's usually volunteer
Oh,
work.
yeah.
It's usually like whoever your local FGC streamer is.
Right.
And I think it's cool for TOs or production to experience different events so that they can see maybe what would work or maybe not work with their events.
Yeah.
Another new event on the Pro Tour for this year is going to be SenCal Standoff.
Mhm.
It's a growing event in Fresno, I believe. It's a growing event. I think they have a really good opportunity, uh, to I think grow beyond, hopefully significantly beyond where they've been the last couple years.
Right.
Um, Samurai, who is in NorCal but
Mhm.
is originally from like the Fresno area, or at least has been in the Fresno area, for a long time,
Mhm.
is I think heavily involved with that event as well. And so, I'm really curious to see how they apply, basically what they've done the last couple years versus like, maybe what they've learned. Um, or where they can improve for this year and beyond,
Yeah.
because I think they have a really great opportunity, just like undefeated,
Yep.
just like
There's another one too in Canada, isn't there?
yeah. And forgive me guys, I probably should know the name of it. I can't remember the name. I
Mhm.
can probably look it up. Let me Google it real quick. But yeah, in Toronto, they've got again just a really good opportunity to, and of course it's not on the site. It's not on the Pro Tour site. But they have a really good opportunity to, I think, build something special in their respective regions. Oh, there it is. Armor Break. That's what they're called.
Yes, 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 yes.
Armor Break. Uh, Drew Face would probably kill me if I
Oh no.
didn't bring that up. Drew Face actually, he's Toronto area,
Mhm.
working on Armor Break, along with the other guys there, and he actually did my Mike's Bizarro Adventure logo on my stream.
Which I've seen, by the way. I love that. I think it's
Yeah,
so neat.
and my stream is very Jojo's aesthetic. But they have, I think, a really good opportunity, and I'm glad that I was able to help bring in some fresh blood in
Yeah.
terms of tournaments for 2020.
Yeah, and that was the thing I was really surprised about too. And I think a lot of people were, where there was a lot of like final round didn't make it on the Pro Tour, but these smaller tournaments did. And I think that's what's really cool. And I actually like that idea in that we're bringing newer tournaments in and different scenes and highlighting these different scenes. And I think it's going to be really cool to kind of showcase new players because of course, these scenes are going to be streamed. Um, and they have that Capcom Pro Tour stamp,
Hmm.
so people are gonna watch it naturally. So I
Well, and the other thing too is like, for a lot of these events, they have been doing the TOs have been doing great things, right? And part of it is also sort of being rewarded for
yeah.
that.
Oh yeah.
Look, there are so many events out there. Everyone wants to be on something like a pro tour, and you know, I'll be the first one to tell you it is incredibly difficult to manage. Uh, you know, uh, both like the size and like how do you add or subtract, like it's the hardest thing in the world. Um and but also like trying to represent regionally. And so my hope is that as all of these world tours progress, that they get better at representing you know different regions,
Yeah.
both like in the US but internationally as well,
Yeah.
uh to help cultivate the communities there, because sure, having locals is great, but also if you don't have, major events, then that kind of that can the interest can fade,
Oh
right?
yeah, absolutely.
Uh, so having, helping different events at the different levels too. not just the evos and the combo breakers or whatever. Um, Being able to like spotlight them and support them, I just would like to see more of that as time goes on.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think it's a good thing. And I want to see more of it. Now, we hit the hour mark, so we can go ahead and we'll wrap up a little bit. But
Sure.
the one thing I want to ask you,
Hmm.
is kind of a fun question, and
Okay.
you can answer
We've already had
twice.
our JoJo's talk, so
Yes, we had the
I don't
JoJo's
know.
talk.
I don't know how we can top this.
um, but and you can answer it twice because I know you technically have two different scenes. But what's one thing you want people to know about the Seattle scene, and what's one thing you want people to know about the Northern California scene?
Um, Seattle has always been, I don't know if overlooked is the right word.
Mhm.
Um, Maybe overshadowed a bit by other regions. And they've had some breakouts here and there, like breakout success here and there.
Yeah.
Uh, what I will say is, specifically, like the guys playing Street Fighter, uh, that is, of course I'm gonna be biased, but like that is the best group of friends that I could have.
Mhm.
Uh, still we still talk regularly, of course. When I go up to Seattle to visit, I try to make time to hang out. Um, they have been super supportive of like me as a friend and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I miss those guys a lot. I really do. I mean, quite honestly, if I had an opportunity to go back, if work took me back, whatever, I would do it. My family's also in Seattle, so
Okay.
there's that too.
Yeah,
But
yeah. Families, but
yeah,
the
yeah.
scene definitely.
But I mean, from a fighting game perspective, there's some very strong players there, and I would say that I want them to work hard to succeed,
Yeah.
because I think that they have the ability to, and I don't want to say that they're lazy, um, but uh, I think that at times in Seattle there has been sort of opportunities to there's been more opportunities for them to kind of show up and succeed, and they haven't always taken advantage of that.
Yeah.
uh and I would like to see that scene do that, because I think they're strong, and maybe that's part of like working with like the Vancouver scene as well, but like I think they're in a really good place right now to do just that. So I just want to see those guys work hard and succeed.
Yeah. That's awesome.
um for NorCal, they're doing a lot of great things, and you know it's weird because NorCal's almost like a second family to me in
Mhm.
terms of like, family and friends in the FGC.
Right.
Even when I was still in Seattle, I would hang out with the NorCal guys so much that people actually thought I was from NorCal.
Oh.
And so for those guys, I think they're in a similar situation where I know they're working hard. I want to see them take advantage of the opportunities to succeed. But I think also that there are some players in this region in particular that either I'm a little surprised, or that they haven't had more opportunities, um, like to compete or succeed in
Mhm.
terms of like some players, you know, they went unsponsored or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And it's hard. Like when you're self-sponsored, like it's hard, right?
Oh yeah.
So I think in NorCal, I it's weird to say that they are kind of there are some players that have been overlooked, that I think should have been, if they were given more opportunities, they could have been more successful.
Mhm.
So I'm hoping that you know whether it's organizations or whatever, I'm hoping they're paying attention to the players that are in NorCal. Maybe part of it is like you kind of get overshadowed by like the NLBCs and the Wednesday night fights in SoCal now,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Um, but I NorCal's always going to be sort of a hotbed of fighting games because all of the publishers are out here. Bandai Namco and Capcom,
Yeah.
they're out here, right?
Yeah.
Um, Even I think Art System Works might be out here too. I can't remember. But I mean, very strong scene that kind of hit its own downturn and is bouncing back. And I'd like to see some of these NorCal players get some of the, I don't know if exposure is the right word, but just opportunities to compete, to show what they can do as well.
Yeah. No, that's awesome.
I guess the key word for me is opportunity. And
Opportunity. All right.
I think I think that just keeps coming to mind because I also feel like no matter what, however good or bad things went, uh with what I was doing over the years, both in media and working in like on the inside in esports, my goal was to try and create more opportunities.
Yeah.
And I think, fighting games as an esport is still very young. It still has a long ways to go, but the key for me is like we created and are still creating lots of opportunities at the player level, the TO level, the production, like the whole nine,
Mhm.
all across the board. Um, do some of those opportunities work out? Not always. Do some people take advantage of those opportunities to their fullest potential? Not always. Um, but I mean, I feel like those opportunities are always there, and they're going to be there. Uh, it's a slow race, right? Like it's
Yeah.
not a sprint.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, as long as we're creating opportunities for players and TOs and just the community in general, uh, then I feel good about that. And as long as people are taking advantage of those opportunities in a good way, obviously, I feel good about that.
Yeah.
That's the dad in me, I guess.
The
You
dad of the
know.
FGC. Not FGC dad,
Yeah,
but the dad of the FGC.
good, right. Yeah. It's funny. I knew who that was.
Oh. Yeah, well didn't they reveal that recently?
They did, but I knew who it was before
Yeah.
that. They had asked me for some advice about some things. It's funny that you mentioned that because like I don't want to say that like they're all my children, but you know what, there are a lot of players that I've gotten to know very well,
Mhm.
and if they feel like family to me, and a couple of them, I mean, I don't know, maybe they do look at me as kind of like a father figure.
Yeah.
But and I'm okay with that because like I do kind of feel like these are I'm doing the best I can to like take care of my children, whether it's giving them opportunities or we've created a pro tour where there's lots of tournaments, there's different ways to enter, there's different ways to there's different initiatives, this that whatever, right?
Mhm.
At the end of the day, I want to see more opportunities for everyone. uh and I think that goes back to where I mentioned like we have kind of like the middle class players that are now kind of bubbling up, right?
Yeah.
And they're on the cusp of becoming breakout players or top players, let's say. And for better or worse, Street Fighter League I think was a great example of that. You now have NuckleDo, Rob TV, and Dual Kevin living in a house together.
Which is like insane.
Yeah, and yeah, they're a Street Fighter League team, right? But
Yeah.
like those three guys are gonna, I think, do great things for each other. And and Dual Kevin and Rob TV, I would definitely classify as sort of like that middle class player, right?
Yeah.
If none of this existed, no one would know who they are. They'd still just be like the dudes at the, well, maybe Dual Kevin because he had a pretty successful Marvel career, but like they would still just be kind of, I don't know, hanging out in the rest of the pack
Yeah.
in their locals, right? Or
Yeah.
like even at major tournaments, like they wouldn't be uh they wouldn't be more known. But also I think especially with like Dual Kevin, great example of a player. JB also great example of players that like they took advantage of their opportunities and were super. Dual Kevin made top 8, came in 5th place at CEO.
Mhm.
Like that is a great success story.
Oh yeah.
And that's through hard work, and that's through uh um I think having an avenue or a path for him to do that, beyond just like playing at his locals.
But I mean, so like you mentioned the Street Fighter League, and now we
Hmm.
have the amateur Street Fighter League.
Hmm.
And I think that's an
Yeah.
awesome way to, again, highlight those middle class players that we're seeing. Unless you went to like, yeah, unless you made it out of pools at Evo and you happen to go to NARF, like me.
Well,
uh,
it's It's that, and I think it goes back to the idea of like Japan recognizing Japanese community recognizing, hey, we don't have like a next generation of player coming in
Yeah.
to replace, not replace, but to grow beyond the same dudes that have been playing Street Fighter for 30 years, right?
Yeah.
uh and the idea there is to like not just, I think, build up that middle class so that they can raise up to, you know, let's say top player status, right?
Yeah.
But also to, build up new players. I think there's new people always interested in playing fighting games. Not all of them know, how to get involved. And I think we do a relatively great job at trying to tell people, inform people how to get involved. But fighting games as a community, like it's unique, it's vast, it's different. Every scene is different, right? Every game is different.
Oh yeah.
And so it's not, I think it's not always easy, and then there's been initiatives to kind of try to bring it all together to make it easier. Like top tier, the website toptier.gg is one way. Street Fighter Reddit, like they have collectives of like locals and schedules and things like that. But because this thing is so big in the sense of like it's just kind of vast, right? It's just
Yeah.
spread out everywhere.
Yeah.
It is hard to maybe get involved. And then of course we go back to like how do you stay involved, right?
Of course.
Um, and I think having something focused on new players and sort of like amateurs. So that's the other thing. That's the misconception of like what is a pro player in fighting games? Is it someone that's sponsored? Because not a lot of sponsored players are getting paid.
Yeah.
And to me, a professional gets paid for what he does.
Yeah.
Is it a player that wins a tournament? I don't know. Like it's so hard to define, right? So I think when we look at like amateur status, to me, it's like newer players or players who are trying to, you know, maybe not necessarily do this thing for a living, but let's just say like do this as like a semi-pro, right? They can
Right.
go to a
Right.
few events a year, they can compete. Maybe they place, or maybe they can, get out of pools. Like obviously, the first goal is not to go 0-2. The next
Yeah.
goal is get out of pools.
Yeah.
And the fighting game community is always, because it is so vast, like it's very difficult for, I think, some people to figure out what that progression is without help, of course. And I think that's where local communities and initiatives like amateur leagues or whatever you want to call it should help with that.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think. Yeah. I mean, I agree. I think you hit it on the nail there. Um. Now we're coming to a close. Is there anything, any final words you want to leave us with?
If you have not watched JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, you absolutely should. I don't want to hear any BS about like you watched some part and you skipped other parts. You should watch it all.
Yes.
You should appreciate it all for what it is. Now,
Yes.
you don't have to like every part. I don't necessarily, well, I do like every part, but I don't think, some parts that people love the most are the best. Uh, if you want my ranking, part two, part five, part four, part three, and part one. That is my JoJo's tier list. So what did I say? Two,
Two,
five,
five, four,
four,
three, one.
three, one.
Yeah.
Most people like Stardust Crusaders the most. Um, that's fine. Uh, and my favorite character comes out of Stardust Crusaders.
Mhm.
But that is the only part of JoJo's where they could have actually cut episodes out. It's the only time that anime actually was anime, in that they had like a bunch of filler episodes that they could have cut out.
Oh,
Okay,
absolutely.
so anyways, you should watch JoJo's and you should share in that experience with me and everyone else on Twitter and social media and streams and whatnot, because I love JoJo's.
So, if they want to
Um,
share that experience, where can they find you on social media?
I do tweet a lot, probably still more than I should. At Bizarro underscore Mike. That is one Z, two R's. I hate it when people spell Bizarro with two Z's. I'm like, that is not how you spell Bizarro. That's weird. Um, and I do stream a lot right now because I'm unemployed. I can't wait to look back on this in like a year or two.
Right, right.
Hopefully, I'll have a job. Um, But I do stream twitch.tv/Bizarro Mike, no underscore there. And yeah, I mean, I play a lot of different games, but I'm still very heavily. I mean, I'm not working in fighting games currently, but I still obviously pay attention. It is something that I love. I have loved since the day I put the first quarter into Street Fighter 2
Hmm.
uh, in the corner store around the block from my high school
Yeah.
uh, in Tacoma, Washington. And so yeah, I just you can find me there, but I think really what I want to end with is I love fighting games. I love the community. I know a lot of us do, um, and I just want us to continue to grow, but especially be better people in our communities, and make sure you're doing your best to invite people to these communities and keep your communities open to everyone, uh, because if you want your game to stick around, the best way to do that is to get more people to play it. And if you're an asshole, if you're gatekeeping, uh, that's not gonna people aren't gonna stick around for that, and that means less people are playing your game. So I don't know why you'd want that. Let more people be more inviting and open and nurturing to this community, and people will come and play your games, and then you all get to grow and succeed in whatever you determine being successful in fighting games is.
Yeah. All
That's
right.
it.
I think that's a good ending now. Well, Mike, it's been great. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Always, always, always. All right. And on that note, thank you, listeners, and we'll see you next week.